All right, hello. What we're going to do, hopefully you've had a chance to watch the introductory video. That was video number one. This will be video number two, and then we'll have some more to follow as the Edwards week progressed this past fall. If the video got too long and drawn out, you didn't care for all the details, understand I ramble more than I should. Many commenters on my videos acknowledge that. But if you haven't seen that video, just real quickly, back in the fall, the week of the 500th anniversary of the Reformation, from October the 31st on Monday until October the 30th on Monday, 31st Tuesday, and then first, second, Friday the 3rd, and then came back home on Saturday the 4th. The whole week was filled with nothing but going and visiting and seeing things and places and people related to Jonathan Edwards. I mentioned this book here in the introduction video, but if you're ever going to attempt to do an Edwards trip on your own, number one, first thing you should do is purchase this book, Jonathan Edwards, A God-Centered Life, An Enduring Legacy. The travel with up there isn't part of the title, but it kind of denotes a series, travel with all these famous theologians and Christians. So type in that title without travel with on Amazon, and you can find that book for sale. And even if you don't make an Edwards trip, that book would be a good way to learn about Edwards, but also see more pictures about Edwards than I've ever seen in any other book. So on Monday, I found myself at the Atlanta airport and still going over my book, trying to read through it, and got to Boston a little bit after lunchtime. After that, got my rental car and headed southwest. My first stop was Enfield, Connecticut. And if you're familiar with Edwards, you're probably familiar with that name. That is where he preached his sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. So this famous sermon that has been downloaded however many number of times on sermonaudio.com, and that numerous people have read in school in their English or literature class. My first stop was seeing actually where this sermon was preached. And there's a boulder there that marks the place. There's a shrub around it. It's real easy to find. You can see the little map down here. It sits right off of a main road there in the town. I'm standing close to the main road. You've got maybe 20-30 feet of grass and then a sidewalk, and then coincidentally the white house at the back of the property is for sale. I don't know if between the sidewalk and the road belongs to the county or the city or the people who own the house, but either way, this house was for sale. So whoever buys this house will be owning property that is connected to where Jonathan Edwards preached his famous sermon. So if you've got plenty of money and you're an Edwards fan, you can buy a piece of church history. There you can see what the marker says. You can pause it if you'd like to go back and read that. I won't read that to you. Me trying to set up. If you're familiar with the sermon, you know that Edwards makes use of a spider, and he talks about a spider or some other repulsive, venomous creature, some loathsome insect that we just want to cast into the flames. And that's what God's going to do with lost sinners. Well, out of all the creatures and the insects that could have been on that actual boulder that day when I came there, the pictures, yeah, you can probably tell from Nick's picture about size, probably about 2 feet tall, maybe about 4 feet wide. Standing there, getting my tripod and stuff, and I saw something move, and it was actually a spider. I've got a video clip of it going up across the words and stuff. So one day when I get time, I'm gonna overlay that clip of that spider on that rock with a dramatic reading of Edwards talking about the spider being cast down. So maybe make a little 10 or 15 minutes loop, 10 or 15 second loop. That'll work out quite nicely. You can see in the middle of the picture the white house in the back of the property that's for sale, with the center where the center stone is up here near the road. to the right is a big fancy white house, and to the left is a fancy, or at least in my estimation, a fancy red house on the left. What struck me, the I parked there towards the marker, and the lady in the red house told me I needed to move. Well, after I moved and I made some pictures and tried to make a few video clips, um, I talked to her because she came outside again, I guess wondering why I was out there for so long. And I asked her, I said, "Ma'am, do you know what took place over there?" And she said, "No." And I said, my mouth kind of dropped open, and I said, "I came over 1,000 miles to see this rock, and you've never even noticed it?" She said, "Well, I've seen it before, but I've never read it." And it just floored me. It just goes to show, what we're interested in, other people may think nothing of. And so here, not in her front yard, but next to her front yard is the most famous sermon in American history, or on our continent, and she's never even read the marker. So I tried to encourage her to look up some things online and find out a little more about what took place in her own neck of the woods. Hopefully she did that. The next stop was in Wethersfield. It's a place called the First Church of Wethersfield. You can see some information in the Travel with Jonathan Edwards book about this place. If you're pressed for time on an Edwards trip, I would see the center stone before I would go here. If you have the time, obviously include it. But if you there's nothing here that is original or technically related to Edwards that I know of. Be honest, I personally don't remember why this church was connected with others, other than they just wanted to have a room in his honor. I don't believe there's any, he didn't pastor there or anything like that. So I think this is just more of a memorial to Edwards. But if you have the time, it would be cool to check out, especially if you don't go to Stockbridge, because the six-sided rotating desk that you see here in the picture, this is a replica of that desk, and a very nice replica. But the real deal is at Stockbridge. So if you're able to go to Stockbridge to see that desk, I wouldn't feel too bad about missing this. But if you can go, be sure to include it. Give the church a call. Let them know that you're coming, because one of the people who worked there, who wasn't the pastor, I can't remember his exact title. But he took time out of what he was doing to come let me in and check things out and take some pictures. So make sure they know you're coming. A replica of the Badger portrait. I believe his first name was Joseph, that Joseph Badger painted. Joseph Badger. Which is the only, as far as we know, the portrait that's normally you recognize as Jonathan and Sarah. That was made by Joseph Badger, and was the only portraits made of those of Jonathan and Sarah while they were alive. So that we can trust that's an accurate representation of what him and his wife Sarah looked like. Replica of the rotating desk. Some books there, very expensive books that they have for people to come look at. Hopefully people come look at them. I don't know, but a lot of money sitting on that bookshelf. Hopefully somebody makes use of it. Okay, the next stop in East Windsor. It shows up on the map as South Windsor. Not exactly sure why the change in name. Not sure what happened in history because of that. But in Edwards' day, it was called East Windsor. You can see here, it runs along Main Street there in the town. And I passed it because obviously, as you can tell, the marker's not there. And found out, talking to some people at the end of the road, that there was a really bad windstorm the week before, or the weekend prior to when I came on Monday. And it damaged the birth marker of where Jonathan Edwards was born. So that was kind of disheartening, but there's a good ending to the story on Friday afternoon. We'll get to that in video number 6. So here we are where Jonathan Edwards was born. if you go back up the road and past the stop sign on the right there, you'll come to on the left, or you can kind of see here in the picture moving a little bit up the road and to the left is the old burying ground, God's Acre. Um, I have it on a video. Well, I'm not going to show you now. But there's another sign explaining where the actual church once stood in relation to this cemetery. And so what we have here is the resting place of the body of Jonathan the Stad Timothy Edwards. A lot of these markers were, I mean, you're talking about, assuming they were placed when they died. I'm guessing they were. You're going back, to what are we talking about? 1750s thereabouts. So almost 300 years, creeping up to it in the next few decades. So a lot of it was really worn, and actually the pictures show it better than the naked eye. I guess the way the lighting works or whatever. I could actually see it better looking through my phone than I could with my own eyes. And so there's Jonathan's dad, one of Jonathan's relatives. I can't remember now off the top of my head who this was. The Jonathan Edwards book would explain it. There's Mary, either a sister or an aunt. And here is Jonathan's mom. So we've got Esther Stoddard Edwards, wife of the Reverend Timothy Edwards and daughter of the Reverend Solomon Stoddard of Northampton. And here they are together. So on the left, you've got Jonathan's mother, and on the right, you've got Jonathan's father, and then the next few to the right of Jonathan's dad, Timothy, you've got a couple others. One of them's name was Mary, and then another was Jerusha. I believe it's not the Jerusha that died, Jonathan's daughter. I believe that may have been one of his sisters, if memory serves me correctly. So there in that little plot of the cemetery, you've got some Edwards people. It was getting dark, and I'd been there for a little while already, walking around. So I don't know how much more there is that you could figure out is connected to Jonathan, in this picture. But at least there his parents are. And it's a pretty good sized cemetery too. Okay, the building no longer stands. You can tell by the dates, but where Jonathan's dad Timothy would have pastored would be this fellowship right here. And there's a picture of the church building that had Jonathan's dad live for 200 years. He would have been preaching in that building right there, which is further back down. Here you see the red dot at the bottom right of the screen. There's the cemetery. You go back south and you pass Jonathan Edwards' birth spot, and you will see the body of believers where Timothy Edwards pastored. Okay, and then the next day goes to Stockbridge, and so we'll conclude this video and then pick up with video 2 referring to Stockbridge. One interesting thing that happened, was able to talk to some guys while I was in the cemetery, about to go in it, and still just kind of let down a little bit that the birth marker wasn't there. There was 3 guys come by on a bicycle, maybe in their late teens, early 20s, and I was speaking with them. And I asked them about it, and they said, yeah, they knew where it was. And one guy actually told me, he said that Jonathan wasn't buried actually where that marker was. He said that it's towards the back of the property, but the sign is just there close to the road to mark that. And I asked him, I said, well, do you know where it is? He said, yeah. And I said, any way you could sneak me back there? Or he said, well, it's in the back property of someone's house. And I said, do you know those people well enough that you could walk me back there? And he said, no, I don't really know them that well. But, thought that was a kind of interesting. I don't know exactly how he knows that. Maybe it's just legend or something. But either way, able to talk to some more people and able to hopefully, share some knowledge with them. And that was pretty much it on Monday. So we had Enfield, the center sermon, stopped at the Jonathan Edwards room, in the reading room is what they call it, in Wethersfield, First Church of Wethersfield, and then able to see where Edwards was born and where his parents are buried, and where, you're talking about a little stretch, maybe quarter of a mile, third of a mile, between the birthplace and the church that Edwards would have went to, every week. That little stomping ground right there is where America's greatest theologian would have grown up, and so that was good on my first day of the trip. All right, so we'll call it quits on this video, and that was Monday, and video 2 is going to lead us to Stockbridge. I know I mispronounced this. Everybody knows that I'm from the South, can tell, but Stockbridge, Massachusetts. My wife says that I put too many T's in there towards the middle of it. So in Stockbridge is where day 2 began. So with that, we'll end this video, and I hope that you'll continue watching this playlist so that you can see how the rest of the week went on my Edwards trip. Please subscribe to the channel. Please visit the website, preachertony.com/JETrip, or just preachertony.com and click on the top right, and you can see all the photos from here, full size, that you can zoom in on. And if you know any fellow Edwards fans, feel free to share this with them as well. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the